screen's going, so we'll see how IT proficient I am in a second. But firstly, thank you very much for attending today and come to listen about apprenticeships. Really great to have the opportunity and great to have such a diverse sort of cast really to talk to today. So I'll jump straight in and yeah, just introduce myself. My name's Neil Tamplin. I work for a company called Aspiration Training. I'm the managing director for Wales. Very, very brief potted history of me and why I'm in this industry. I actually started as an apprentice. I actually trained as an apprentice chef and worked in hospitality and catering for about 13, 14 years. And accidentally, I really fell into learning and development. And I've been in the learning and development sector ever since, really, for probably about the last 20 years. So I've got first-hand experience of being an apprentice and what apprenticeships can do for you and the journey that it can take you on. So hopefully I can transmit some of that across to you today. In terms of Aspiration Training, in terms of us as a business, again, potted history. We've got over 20 years experience in the training sector, delivering apprenticeships. On average, we support about 4,500 people every year with qualifications, various apprenticeships. And that's quite a significant number. And what I would just say there is we do have a business in England as well. So we've got Wales and we pretty much cover Pan Wales. And in England, we pretty much cover the whole of the UK. There's certain patches that we don't look after anymore. But yeah, in essence, we pretty much are national. What I would say is we are regulated. We are regulated by ESTIN, obviously because we fall under the education banner. So we are regularly inspected and we are rated as good under ESTIN. So we've got some good support mechanisms there. And again, just a little bit about us. You know, we're currently rated 4.8 out of 5 on Trustpilot, which you know is getting more and more recognition. And certainly in our sector, you know, we think that's a very, very high score. We've won numerous awards, but the most recent award was we were the childcare apprenticeship provider for the year nationally last year. And what I would also say is that in terms of how we operate, a lot of the programs that we run are funded by ESF funding and by Welsh Government as well. And what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go throughout. So again, in terms of us and who we are, the business Aspiration Training originated in Wales, but as I said, we do a fair bit in England as well. As a provider of apprenticeships, we specialise in care and education or early years education. So what we class as the licence to practice sectors. We also do, so in terms of that, that's things like health and social care, that's child care. So we do play work, teaching assistants. So we specialise in that sort of area. But we also cover what we class business services. So apprenticeships can be delivered in things like customer service, contact centre. We do team leading type qualifications, as well as high level management qualifications. And it's quite a broad church that we cater for in terms of that. And qualifications go from level 2 up to level 5, which is around degree level. You can actually now do apprenticeships at level 7. A colleague of mine, for example, is doing an apprenticeship MBA at the moment. And so, you know, the breadth is even wider than just that. But as a business, we cater for those sectors specifically. You can do apprenticeships in a massive range of different areas. So, for example, digital marketing is probably one of the key apprenticeships that are being driven at the moment. So noticing that we've got a few people on here sort of in that sphere, that's quite one that is being driven at the moment. IT is another one where to meet the needs and demands of the sort of different countries, different areas, are some of the areas that Welsh Government are pushing providers to move into in order to develop apprenticeships and training for them. What I would say is we've always been quite a digital pioneer in training. What do I mean by that? We've always sort of invested in the technology side of things to make sure that we give a rich sort of learning experience, that we're using the best of technology. but not forgetting that you need that sort of people element of it as well. And, you know, clearly the last 12 months has affected absolutely everybody. I mean, we were well placed at the time in terms of moving our delivery from more face-to-face, sort of in-person to online training. But actually what's happened is a lot of providers then caught up, and we've kicked on again from that in terms of some of the digital stuff that we're working on at the moment. Again, I'll talk to you a bit more about that as we go through. I think one of the things that we always sort of talk about in terms of the apprenticeships and our apprenticeship offer is a blended learning. What do we mean by that? It's not about chalk and talk anymore. We mix face-to-face, one-to-one sessions. We mix group sessions. We do some of those online. We can do some of those sort of in the classroom, in person. We also have other tools such as a VLE, or a virtual learning environment, where learners can actually go in, pick up resources, work on them in their own time. It self-marks, and actually then get real-time instant feedback. Similarly for employers as well, there's a wealth of resources that we can use around that as well. But that's just a little bit about us and our background and where we've come from. And obviously we've got our sort of mission statement in there. But really, again, there are quite a few training providers, and we focus on certain areas, and there are other training providers out there that will cover the sectors that you're in. So although I'm here to talk a bit about Aspiration Training, I'm also here to promote the brand of apprenticeships. And what I would say there is, if you are interested in any sort of apprenticeships that may be a sector that I don't cover, please get in touch, because I can put you in touch with another organisation that may be able to help with that. So I'm prepared to, you know, help with that in whatever way I can. In terms then of the next slide, I'm just going to put it out there. What does anybody know about apprenticeships? Is there anybody that's had experience of apprenticeships, got apprentices at the moment?
I started as an apprentice, so I'm very familiar.
What did you do, James? You don't mind me asking?
It was business management at the age of 16, and I've been with Rutherford ever since. So yeah, they supported me really well.
Okay. Oh, good. And did you enjoy it?
Parts of it, yeah. yeah. I mean, as a 16-year-old, you're not. It takes a while to adapt to the working world, but I did it through a local college, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Anybody else had any experience of apprenticeships? I assume everybody has heard of apprenticeships. I suppose that's probably, yeah, I mean, I suppose everybody's heard of that, which is a good start. So, okay, so look, when we start engaging with employers, we get, there's usually a raft of the usual questions that we get asked. And so what I did on the next one, I just want to do a bit of myth busting really about apprenticeships, just to see where everybody is. So I've got a couple of questions here. So first one on there, apprenticeships are only for school leavers. And by school leavers, we're talking 16 to 18-year-olds. So you've got your emojis, or if you want to do it physically, give me a thumbs up if you think that's true, or a thumbs down if you think it's false. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, on that particular one, yeah, it is false. So it is one of the common misconceptions, believe it or not, even still, that apprenticeships are only for school leavers who haven't particularly done well within their education setting. And it is more for traditional sort of roles such as bricklaying or engineering or electricians and plumbers. That's not the case at all. And let me put it into context. Our oldest apprentice at the moment is 68 years old. A lady has come back to work in the health and social care setting because of wanting to give back because of the coronavirus pandemic. But actually, because you have to be licensed to practice in the health and social care setting, she's accessed the apprenticeship funding in order to be able to do that. So again, just an example of some of the myths that we get around that. So the next one there is apprenticeships don't add value to a business. So again, any thumbs up if you think that's true, thumbs down if you think it's false. And we're doing all right here. We're 2 for 2 at the moment. This is good. This is good. So again, it is false. You know, we gather a lot of data, a lot of intelligence from our apprentices and the employers of those apprentices as to the value to that particular business. And what we get to see is that things like spreading the workload really helps across the whole of the team, helps with team morale specifically. We see a lot of productivity from apprentices, new challenges, new thought processes. Certainly see a lot of interaction in terms of driving new business through social media is probably one of the key areas that we're seeing at the moment through that. So quite a lot of things that an apprentice can bring to your business and can add value to. The final one on there, again, thumbs up or thumbs down, apprenticeships are too expensive. Give me a thumbs up if you think it's true, thumbs down if you think it's false. It's like a game of Jeopardy, isn't it? Yeah. So again, 3 for 3, it's actually false. So what do we mean by that? So there is a common misconception that I'm going to have to spend X amount of time with my apprentice. That means there's less time I can spend with my clients or my customers or my business. Or they're going to be in college or for 3-4 days a week. What am I going to be able to do with an apprentice that does that? So those are some of the myths that we tend to have to deal with when we start engaging with employers around apprenticeships, and all are completely not true. As I said, we offer a blended learning. So our teams and most apprenticeship providers come out to the workplace. We fit in and around the employer. We fit in and around the learner. We offer sessions in the evening, sessions on weekends. We come and do observations whilst they're working. And again, what I would say there is that that blended approach really does help both learner and employer in terms of getting that apprenticeship completed. As I said at the beginning, we are funded by Welsh Government. So a lot of apprenticeships, there is no cost to the employer either. Everything can be through Welsh Government. There are eligibility criteria, of course, that we have to look at, but the majority of apprentices that we engage with are funded through Welsh Government, supported by ESF. In England, similar, slightly different, variation on a theme, but again, there is a funding mechanism in order to be able to promote and put apprentices through their thing. So relatively speaking, there is a cost. There is a cost in terms of an employer's time and apprentice time, but in terms of a financial input, that sort of myth is a little bit of, isn't actually true. There's nothing to say, there's nothing that you have to pay for. So what is an apprenticeship? So if I had my PR handbook in front of me, which I do, and I was looking at what was promoted as an apprenticeship, this is the answer. So apprenticeship is a way of enhancing and developing skills, and apprentices earn while they learn in a real job, gaining a real qualification and a real future. That's the stock answer, if you will. And having been an apprentice myself, absolutely, that I can attest to that. I think there was certainly the status or the sort of promotion of apprenticeships has got really, really good over the last couple of years, and there is a sort of balance now between this being a very, very viable option for you as you leave school, as opposed to just sixth form, colleges, or university. That's not to say any of those are wrong or bad, but I think apprenticeships were seen as the poor relation in terms of that. And actually that has balanced out, and we are starting to see some real promotion of that across the board. We had National Apprenticeship Week only last week, for example. We had the Education Minister from Gavin Williams came on to and did a round table with some of our learners and really talked about how they want to promote more around apprenticeships, and how that will look across not just England, Wales, but Scotland and Northern Ireland, and how do we make sure that we get those sort of gaps filled across all areas. So again, there is real validity now in apprentices, and as I said, some apprenticeships go up to level 7, so it's not even entry jobs anymore. There is a higher level for that. What makes up an apprenticeship? So again, this is one of the other questions I tend to get asked. Well, it's just an NVQ, isn't it? A lot of people will have heard of NVQs. Yeah, that again, let me sort of debunk that myth. There's quite a lot that now has to go into an apprenticeship. So first and foremost, There is sector knowledge. There's an underpinning knowledge that we have to teach and learners have to learn in order to achieve their qualification. So they typically have a knowledge section, which is an accredited, separate certificated part of the qualification. That's delivered by those sector experts in line and in conjunction with support from the employer. You then have a practical element of it. So it's what have you learned and how can you apply that in your workplace, and are you applying it in the workplace? And that's pretty much done through observations. We ask the employer to give us expert witness testimonies, professional discussions. There's lots of different ways we capture that practically they've put into place the knowledge that they've learned. An apprenticeship actually encompasses quite a lot of areas outside of just their sector. So a couple of things that we have to build into the apprenticeship program is things like safeguarding, prevent, British values, the wider sort of economy, the wider politics of sort of climate change, things like that. So these are all really important factors that are built into apprenticeships now that we have to evidence, A, that the learner understands, but actually in their role, in their business, how are they contributing to these sustainable sort of initiatives that governments are now looking at as well. So it is actually just wider than the job that they do. The final element as well is something called essential skills. So essential skills in essence are essentially maths, English and IT. So as part of any apprenticeship framework, we typically have to deliver and support upskilling of maths and English. And again, that's probably really important in terms of certain roles and certain jobs. We've had, if you're an engineer, for example, and you can't measure effectively or measure properly, that's going to have an impact on your role. So it's that check and balance that A, that can be achieved, and B, if they can't, we can support in making sure that equips them to be able to do that role going forward. So there's sort of four main areas there that really embrace an apprenticeship. And for each of those areas, there's certification along the way that means that we can verify that that learner has been through that practice. That's really important for employers as well, because it gives them a sense of validity. We often see employers then promote that through their marketing, saying, we're fully accredited, fully qualified, we use professional individuals, and actually we see some upside from that as well. So again, there is quite a lot of detail that goes into that. Typically an apprenticeship program lasts between 12 and 18 months, depending on what qualification and what level it is. There are some apprenticeships that last as long as 4 years. So there are variances in terms of that as well. Not to pick on James, but you did say you've done an apprenticeship, James, but how long did it take you to do yours?
It was over 2 years, I think.
Yeah, so you can see there are a wealth of different areas within that. Our delivery model, again, just everybody, all providers work to the same framework. So whichever provider you go to, if you're going to do a business admin course, we have to work to the same national standards. They're not set by us, they're set by independent panels, and they are distributed to training providers. So there's no USP or uniqueness in terms of the qualification, because that's set centrally. What is unique in terms, or the uniqueness, is how different providers deliver differently. For us as a private training provider, we're not tied to bricks and mortar. So we don't have to worry about, we're not like a college in terms of getting learners in, we can come out to you. We employ sector specialists, so people that have worked in the industry that have that knowledge, and we have different roles. So we have not just a health and social care person, we have a maths expert, or we have an English expert that we would assign to you and your learner in order to make sure that you get the best experience for that. That's not to say others do that, they do things differently and have generalists, but that's how we've set ourselves up as a provider. I've talked about the flexibility, so again, not going to really dwell on that, but it is tailored to you. We work around you and your requirements as well as the learner. Real-time progress tracking and monitoring. So what do I mean by that? So each learner, historically, again, when I started in this industry some 20 odd years ago, we used to do paper portfolios, and some learners would have these magnificent portfolios. They were immaculate, and they'd have 3 or 4 of them. And if you had a caseload of 25 learners, you'd end up having a shopping trolley, and you'd be pushing that around town centre in order to move these portfolios. As time's moved on, and as we said, over the last 12 months in particular, things have picked up. We have an e-portfolio now for each learner and each employer. So you can track and monitor where your learner is and the progress that they're making at any time, 24 hours a day. Equally, they can see where they are as well. And we found that has really generated a lot of interest in being able to help apprentices through their program. We talked about technology. Again, we've invested in things like Zoom. We use Microsoft Teams, and we accommodate wherever we possibly can. We actually have implemented sort of an IT infrastructure as well. So we loan laptops to learners that don't have necessarily access to that. We also help employers with their IT infrastructure. Our own IT team will actually help set up networks, etc., as part of our service. So quite a bit that we do on that. And again, the other area is the virtual learning environment, which I've talked about earlier on, where learners can interface without the need of a coach. They can actually go in, pick up their learning, refer back to previous sessions, and look at upskilling themselves as well. And then again, finally, a couple of bits on there. What I would say is we don't mark our own homework. I think that's really important. It is not us. You might have heard of awarding bodies. One of the most commonly known ones is City and Guilds. Everybody heard of City and Guilds? Might have heard of City and Guilds. So we pay City and Guilds to come and check our quality. So we have an external quality assurance process, and we have to have that. So although we put the work forward and we do check it ourselves, there's a third step, independently quality assured by them, as well as ESTIM, which I talked about at the beginning. And finally, the main point on there is obviously we're supported by Welsh Government and ESF funding. So as in the main, in Wales in particular, it comes from central government. It is fully funded. Therefore, there's not a pounds and pence cost specifically to employers. So that's a big tick in a box as well. So again, why take on an apprentice? Well, look, I can give you lots of different stats. Our learners recommend us, and they recommend the apprenticeship program. It's made a significant difference to them and their lives. We are measured on what we call a success rate. So Welsh Government regularly check on us to make sure that we are achieving, those learners that are working with us are actually achieving their program. Our success rate at the moment is 83%. The national average is 80%, so we're operating above that. And if you were looking for a provider, that's one of the key things I'd be sort of suggesting that you look for. What is their success rate? And again, 89% of the employers that we work with would recommend us and would recommend an apprenticeship route. So again, some really sort of powerful stats there in terms of apprenticeships and what we do. What I would say there is, I suppose throw the question out. What are the current challenges in training and development anybody's facing? Is there anybody that would recognise some of that and think an apprenticeship might fill that gap? No problem. Again, I suppose have a think about it. I think there, as we come out of lockdown and as the economy opens back up, someone mentioned earlier on about the Kickstarter scheme. There are quite a few different schemes that various governments are now trying to put in place in order to help kickstart the economy. Kickstarter is one of them. And what they would like to see is that Kickstarter scheme then fold into an apprenticeship scheme. There are other things such as traineeships, which is more focused around 16 to 18-year-olds, which others are looking at. And again, these are areas that we're looking at. So in terms of apprenticeships, though, Welsh Government at the moment in particular are promoting an employer incentive scheme. So in that instance, there's £3,000 up for grabs for an employer to take on an apprentice in the current climate. That changes periodically. Sometimes they say, oh, well, it's stopped now, but then they reintroduce it. There's always a variation on a theme, but about trying to kickstart the economy and kickstart that, apprenticeships form a major part of that. So again, if it's not through us, because we're not necessarily sort of the right sectors that you may be dealing with, there is an opportunity for you to access some more funding on top of that as well. But let me talk about some of the key benefits there. And again, I won't dwell on these too much. You've got increased productivity, qualifications, no recruitment costs. I would just finish that bit in terms of, on that bit in just terms of giving you an example of the impact an apprentice can have on a business. A few years back, I was working for a training provider based in the Midlands that was working for, we had 2,000 apprentices with Jaguar Land Rover. Those were from level 2 to level 4, some engineers within that. We had one young apprentice, 18-year-old, that had been trained up into their program. Found a fault one day on a car. Trained technicians had completely missed it. This apprentice, through their training, diagnosed a fault that actually saved Jaguar Land Rover somewhere between £5 and £10 million in terms of a product recall for a particular car. So that is just the type of thing that, you know, it's just one example. And yes, you could say that's quite an extreme, but it does show you actually the impact an apprentice can have on your bit. No surprises. That particular learner won Apprentice of the Year in that year for Jaguar Land Rover. But again, it just does show the impact that apprentices can have on your business by bringing in that fresh skill, that fresh talent, and that fresh pair of eyes. Again, I've just put an example in there. This was a recent winner of one of our awards in terms of, this was a healthcare professional, and a healthcare employer, I should say, in terms of some of the service that we've offered to them and just some of the feedback that we've had. So again, I'll just give you a whistle-stop tour of that. And this is just some of the feedback that we tend to get on a regular basis, which is great to see. And just how important sort of apprenticeships are. So I'm just conscious of time, but that's me. That's a whistle-stop tour. I hope you found some value in that, but I'm happy to take any questions.